Energy Australia, with more than 2 million customers and several power stations, says any change to the clean energy target will see power prices rise and stop new energy sources coming online. Energy Australia is backing its rival AGL in its move away from coal, saying there are cheaper and better options, and there is a race on to be the power company to fill the hole that the closure of AGL's Liddell power station will leave. Mark Collette is the energy executive with Energy Australia. He joined me for this exclusive interview. Mark Collette, the government's now signalling that it will either not adopt the clean energy target or it will water it down. Is this going to produce lower power prices for people?
The clean energy target was one of the 50 recommendations that came out of the Finkel review. And I think one point to bear in mind is the Finkel review was a package of recommendations. Electricity is really complicated, and if you adjust a bit over here, it has an impact over there. And one of the challenges of taking the clean energy target out is it may have consequences for the other parts of the package. So I think the overall objective has to be to bring prices down, make them affordable, while also delivering reliable and secure energy and meeting our Paris commitments. If you take clean energy target out of that mix, the question is how do you make it all balanced together going forward?
So clean energy target watered down or non-existent won't see lower prices?
Well, the challenge we face today in power prices is twofold. Prices have gone up when you strip away everything because network bills have gone up, because we've invested a lot in the system, and that's a problem that needs to be worked on. But the second and most recent bit is power stations have closed with almost no notice. So Hazelwood and Northern Power Station have closed. And when you take supply out, prices rise. That's the problem we face. So to bring prices down, you've actually got to get more supply in. And the clean energy target was a mechanism to push that supply in, and it gave parameters on which to do that. The challenge is without it, how do you push the supply in to make sure you bring prices down?
The government's pushing one of your competitors, AGL, to keep the Liddell power plant open, saying that it will shore up supply and hopefully keep a lid on prices. Do you think it would, just extending a plant?
So that's an issue for 2022, which is still quite some time away. AGL I actually thought were quite responsible in giving 7 years notice of closure. 7 years notice is a long time to bring all sorts of solutions to market. And we at Energy Australia, we have a number of solutions that we'll bring forward. Includes gas-fired power stations, demand response, working with customers to reduce their peak load without an impact on them. Batteries, renewables, there's a mix of things. We think they'll be cheaper and better than Liddell. Sure, keeping a power station open is an option. Is it the best option? We don't think so. We focus on the ones that will be cheapest to deliver, which means lowest prices. The
concern from the government is that those options that are coming in, like wind and solar, aren't baseload. They can't replace the 1,000 megawatts that's going to come out of Liddell when we need it and when we want it.
So Liddell does actually two things. One, it provides that firm baseload energy when it's on, and the second is it produces a lot of energy that people use over the course of the year. Renewables do the second of those. They just produce energy. They don't have that firm bit. So that's why to replace the Liddell, if you're going to do renewables, you've got to have other stuff too. It's gas-fired power stations, it's demand response, it's batteries, it's a whole host of other things which exists now. The question is how you put that package together to get the answer. So Liddell is kind of simple because you get it all in the one package. Is it the cheapest option? We don't think so. We think there's much better options out there.
So at Energy Australia, how would you put another 1,000 megawatts into the system by 2022 to fully replace a Liddell?
So for us, we could do 1,000 megawatts tomorrow. We have 400 megawatt opportunity at Tallawarra, a gas-fired power station. We could build a second one. That gets you almost halfway there. We have an open cycle, a gas peaker. We could build elsewhere in a place called Marulan, which could be 600 megawatts. We have expansion opportunities at our coal-fired power station at Mount Piper. We could add perhaps 50 or 100 megawatts there. We've already got conversations going with customers for 200, 300, 400, 500 megawatts of demand response. So you add all that up, it's not that big a number to solve. And we're very confident we can do that by that time period.
And would it add any cost to customers?
So,
because we know, you mentioned gas plants, we know that gas is expensive.
So gas is expensive, but as a mix, if you've got something that's expensive but you only use it a really small amount of the time, and you can balance that with a whole lot of cheaper options like demand response, if we can put control systems in some of the customers' premises where there's no impact on them, a computer system just reduces their cost. That's very low cost. You mix that with the gas, with some battery, with some other things, we're confident that it'll be cheaper than the extension of Liddell. And I think that's the test you've got to apply. Is it cheaper than doing that? If it is, then it should have better impacts on prices.
So are you going to do it? Would you do it?
We're already working on it now. We've got development approval for 2 gas-fired power stations. We've got a number of battery projects already in development. We're doing things already with our customers on demand response in preparation for this summer, not for 2022. We're doing it now. We had a portfolio of customers for last summer. We're introducing people to how it works and getting the adoption rates going so that by the time we get to 2022, this is old news. A lot of it is happening now. We want it to be old news by the time we get there.
You're making it sound very easy. AGL has been hammered by the government over its stance on Liddell. The Prime Minister has said that he doesn't believe that AGL will come up with a plan in 90 days to be able to replace Liddell.
Yeah.
Do you think they will be able to if they're operating like you?
Oh, I think there's lots of options. I think industry's been very clear that there are a number of options to replace Liddell, whether it's gas or the other things that I spoke to. I'd be confident that all of the other companies have got irons in the fire of how they would replace Liddell. And I really see it not so much as a problem, as a race. Who's going to be first to get there and take the space? And that I see as quite an exciting opportunity for the industry.
So what do you make of the debate at the moment and the fact that energy bosses, and particularly AGL, has been dragged to Canberra, has been vilified and lambasted in the media and really pushed by the government for their action on Liddell? How does the industry feel about that?
So I think the industry acknowledges there are a number of problems at the moment. Prices have risen really fast. And it's difficult to understand because it is a complicated industry. And in that environment, there's lots of conversations because it's difficult to understand. I guess where we'd like to see the narrative move towards is how do we make things better faster? And for example, we've got a power station, Mount Piper, which is a fantastic power station, newest black coal power station in New South Wales, provides up to 15% of the state's electricity. We've got a brilliant team there who make reliable and dispatchable power, but we've got a challenge with fuel supply today, which means that power station could shut. We'd rather focus on here and now, get those problems solved and build rather than think about what might come later.
While the national debate is focused on Liddell and AGL, Energy Australia's Mount Piper power station is also at risk of closing, you say, if you don't have access to the coal mine that supplies it, which is under great controversy at the moment because there's environmental concerns over that coal mine. Can you not find coal elsewhere?
So that's the crazy thing. We often get this question, New South Wales is full of coal, why don't you just get it from somewhere else? The reality is there's only one coal mine that's got planning approval to supply Mount Piper, and that's the Springvale mine. It's actually been through the planning process twice in the past couple of years, and it's passed both times. The main issue that's been raised environmentally has been around water discharged into the rivers, and that's been known as an issue. When they got their consent in 2015, we at Energy Australia went to Springvale and we worked out a plan to stop any discharges. So we have a shovel-ready project, a water treatment plant, which will take water from Springvale, put it through Mount Piper, it'll never touch the river. It's a fantastic outcome. That's there ready to go. The court case was all about water discharges. So the really thing that we find quite hard and defies common sense is that the court case is challenging a problem that we've already got a solution permitted and ready to go. Having said that, the court challenge could see the Springvale mine shut, which would mean no more coal to Mount Piper, which would mean no more electricity from Mount Piper.
Are you going to be using the debate over Liddell as leverage to ensure that this issue is closed off in the way that Energy Australia would like to see, that you do have access to this mine? So
we focus on our customers, and my job as Energy Executive at Energy Australia, it's to do one thing, to make or buy energy for our customers and do whatever's the cheapest and best option. Mount Piper is our best and cheapest option, and that's what we're going to push for to get good outcomes for our customers. It isn't just an issue to deal with that will affect the summer and the future. It's an issue we actually need to address now for energy affordability. And the reason I say that is we've been sitting with the spectre of the mine closing for some time. And so in that environment, what we do is we ration coal. We don't burn it all today because we're not sure we've got some tomorrow. And so when you think about that, that means we operate less power than we could, which means that less supply, so prices are higher than they would be otherwise. We think resolution of this planning issue, particularly because we've got an environmental solution ready to go, is one of the best things that could be done to instantly start bringing prices down in New South Wales. No rationing, more supply, has to have a better impact on prices.
If you don't get access to the coal, you mentioned earlier that you have all of these other options to create power in the state. You'll just switch to those?
So we want to take those ones forward, but if we can't get Mount Piper up, Mount Piper is the cheapest and best options that we have there. That will create an immediate gap. That gap will be really hard to fill in the short to medium term. So we'll have to look at what we can do. In the short term, it would be burning the stockpile. We've got a big coal stockpile at Mount Piper, but once that's done, it's gone. It's very hard to replace 1,500 megawatts of coal, or 1,400 rather, in a short period of time. And that's where Mount Piper is a big challenge. It's the immediacy of the impact that's hard to deal with.
We believe the government is trying to tinker with the clean energy target in order to be able to get clean coal under the umbrella and to be able to use it. Is there any interest from industry to build a clean coal plant if it is under a clean energy target?
So I think industry chases the cheapest way to deliver the objectives of whatever scheme we have. And generally it's going to be power with some emissions profile. So once whatever the scheme is comes out, we'll evaluate that. I'd be surprised if coal is the cheapest way to get there. We've just seen other options work out more economically. The other risk with coal is if you believe that Australia will meet its Paris obligation, then it's hard to get up the investment to do coal just because that moves us away from the Paris obligation. So that risk profile on coal makes it very difficult to invest in, and when you couple that with it's actually cheaper to get some other technologies going, I'd be surprised if that's the answer, but we're very happy to compete with anyone who wants to build those projects going forward.
Well, you may actually be competing with the government because the Deputy Prime Minister has continually said that the government may have to fund this. Would it make any sense for you to then invest in, say, wind or solar or other forms of energy if that's going to be subsidised?
Oh, look, the challenge with that project, let's say that it happens. Let's say the government was to build a brand new coal-fired power station and run it flat chat. So 24/7, it's all the time, it's there. The challenge is that that will actually take the space of some of the existing power stations. And what you might do is you might get a bright, shiny new power station, you might knock over Liddell or Mount Piper or some others and end up back where you started needing another one. And that's the tightrope that we're walking at the moment. We think it actually makes more sense to look at, OK, if it's a Liddell problem, solve that with a Liddell solution. Don't insert a big baseload generator that has a completely different profile that will actually knock some other things out of the market. The danger is you do this to reduce prices and it works for a year or two and then bang, you lose some other power stations and we end up back where we are.
Mark Collette, it's been great to have you on the program. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Great to be here.